I still remember the smell of coffee that morning. It, my husband Daniel had passed away just 4 days before. The house we built together, every brick filled with laughter, arguments, love, and late-night talks, suddenly felt like a museum of a life that no longer existed. I was still numb when they showed up. His mother, his brother, and 2 of his cousins. They came unannounced, didn't ask how I was doing. They didn't even bring flowers or condolences. They just walked in, sat down, and handed me an envelope. Inside was a legal notice, unsigned, rushed, printed from the internet, demanding I vacate the house within 2 weeks. I laughed at first. I thought it was some kind of cruel misunderstanding. But then, his mother looked at me with those cold, sharp eyes and said, "Man, this house was Daniel's, not yours. And now that he's gone, you don't belong here." I froze. She continued, "We've already found a buyer. You have 14 days. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I wanted to scream, cry, beg. But instead, I stood up, looked her dead in the eyes, and whispered, "Okay." They thought they won. They thought they'd scared the grieving widow out of her own home. But what they didn't know was what Daniel left behind. Not just memories, but a secret, one that would turn their lives upside down. After they left, I didn't cry. Not yet. I walked through the house, one room at a time, feeling like a stranger in my own home. I touched Daniel's clothes still hanging in the closet. I ran my fingers along the bookshelves he built. But when I reached the old upright piano, the one he used to play on Sunday mornings, something stopped me. A memory. Weeks before his death, Daniel had been acting strange, not sad, not scared, just focused, like he had something on his mind but wouldn't say it. That piano bench had always been his little hiding spot for sheet music, old receipts, and the occasional love note. I opened it. There, tucked between Beethoven and Chopin, was a sealed envelope. My name written in his handwriting. Just 3 words. "For when I'm gone." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter. Just 1 page. He had known. Somehow Daniel knew they would come for me. He had seen how his mother treated me when he wasn't around. Heard the passive-aggressive comments. The way she once said, "You'll never be truly family unless you give us a child." Daniel's letter was a mix of heartbreak and rage. But it ended with one line that gave me strength. "Don't let them take what we built. Because you are my wife, my only family, and this house is yours." There was more. A name, a number, an attorney. I had no idea what was coming next. But I knew one thing. They weren't taking anything from me without a fight. I stared at the name Daniel had written in his letter. Stephen Mallory, family attorney. The next morning, with the envelope clutched tightly in my hands, I drove to his office, a quiet, modest building nestled between a bakery and a bookstore downtown. The receptionist looked up as I entered, her smile warm but cautious. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked. "I don't," I replied, "but my husband—" "Daniel Foster. He told me to come here." After he passed. Her eyes softened immediately. She excused herself and returned moments later, ushering me into a room lined with books and quiet dignity. And there he was, Stephen Mallory. Silver-haired, kind eyes. The sort of man who'd seen 100 family dramas and still believed in doing the right thing. "I've been expecting you," he said. Those 4 words hit me like a wave. I wasn't alone in this. Daniel had thought ahead. He had prepared for this moment. Stephen opened a drawer and pulled out a thick manila folder. "Daniel came to me 2 months before he passed. He wanted to update his will. He had one request, to protect you." I blinked back tears. He continued. "The house, the savings, his shares in the family business, all of it, left to you, not to his mother, not to his brother, to you, and only you." I was stunned. His family had treated me like I was disposable. But Daniel had made it clear, in front of the law, that I wasn't. Stephen handed me a copy of the will. "They'll likely contest it," But trust me, Daniel was thorough. You're going to be okay. I felt something shift inside me. Not revenge, not pride, just quiet strength. The next time I saw his family, it wouldn't be as the grieving widow they tried to bully. It would be as the rightful owner of everything they wanted. Stephen suggested we meet at his office to formally read the will with the family present. I wasn't sure I had the strength to look them in the eye again, but I realized if I didn't show up, they'd think I was weak, that Daniel's choice didn't matter. So I showed up, not as the woman they threw out like trash, but as Daniel's wife, the one he chose to protect. They were all there when I arrived. His mother, sitting stiff and smug in a pearl necklace that Daniel had given her years ago. His brother, Adam, looking bored, probably assuming he'd inherited something, and his sister-in-law, whispering into her phone until she saw me walk in, then quickly ending the call. The room fell silent. No fake condolences this time. No polite, "How are you holding ups?" Just silence. And tension. Stephen greeted me calmly and nodded toward the seat at the head of the table. "Shall we begin?" He opened the will and read it aloud. Word for word. No sugarcoating. Every item Daniel had owned. The house, the car, his savings, and most notably, his 40% ownership in the family's restaurant business, was left to me. You could hear a pin drop. His mother's jaw tightened. "There must be some mistake," she whispered. Stephen calmly shook his head. "Daniel was of sound mind when he signed this. I witnessed it myself. And we recorded it on video, in case of any challenges." Adam scoffed. "This is ridiculous. She's only been in the family for 5 years." 5 years. 5 years of loving their son, caring for him when he was sick, being there when they weren't. I didn't need to defend myself. Daniel had already done that for me. His mother stood up, visibly shaking. "This is a betrayal." I met her eyes, and for the first time I spoke. "No. What you did to me, that was the betrayal." And for once, she had no words. After the will reading, I didn't expect hugs or apologies, but I didn't expect a full-blown counterattack either. 2 days later, I received a letter from a lawyer representing Daniel's mother. She was contesting the will, claiming Daniel had been emotionally manipulated by me in his final months, that I had isolated him from his family, that I pressured him into leaving everything to me. They weren't just grieving. They were furious that they had no control anymore, and furious that the woman they called a gold digger now legally held the keys to the empire they'd built together. But here's what they didn't know. Daniel and I had anticipated this. Months before he passed, we had already updated the business records, retitled the house in my name, and left a full video testimony where he stated, clearly and without hesitation, why he chose to leave everything to me. Not out of spite, but out of love. Because he saw through them the way they excluded me. The subtle comments his mother made when she thought I couldn't hear. The way his brother joked about family money being wasted on someone like me. Daniel wasn't blind. I took the lawyer's letter, scanned it, and sent it to Stephen. His reply was brief. "We'll handle it. They don't have a case." But still, the damage was emotional. They painted me as the villain. Friends stopped calling. I heard whispers at the grocery store. Someone even left a hateful note in my mailbox. It was lonely. But I reminded myself, they had already shown me who they were the moment they kicked me out. This was just the final act of their cruelty. And I was no longer scared of them. After the legal dust settled, and I was confirmed as the sole heir to Daniel's estate, I stepped into the restaurant for the first time since his funeral. My heart was heavy, but there was something else. Resolve. Daniel built that restaurant from nothing. It was his pride and joy, the place where we fell in love. Late nights after closing, him cooking just for me, and laughter echoing between empty tables. But now it felt cold, almost hostile. His brother Mark had taken over operations during the months when Daniel was sick, and I was at home caring for him. The staff barely looked at me as I walked through the kitchen. There was tension in the air, like they didn't know if they should acknowledge me, or pretend I was some stranger intruding. I walked straight to Daniel's old office, pulled out the key I'd worn on a chain around my neck, and unlocked the door. Everything inside was still the way he left it. His notes, his planner, the framed photo of us on our wedding day. But then I saw a folder sitting half-hidden beneath a pile of menus, labeled in Daniel's handwriting, "Private, do not remove." Inside were pages of financial documents, receipts, memos, and a handwritten letter addressed to me. That's when I realized Mark had been siphoning money, thousands, over months, disguised as vendor costs and phantom payroll. Daniel had found out. He'd written everything down. The letter read, "If you're reading this, it means I didn't get the chance to confront him myself. But I trust you'll know what to do. You always do. Protect what we built." Tears welled in my eyes. Not just from the betrayal, but from the way Daniel still trusted me. Even in death. I stepped out of the office and looked around at the restaurant once more. No longer scared. No longer uncertain. This wasn't just a restaurant anymore. It was the battlefield. And I had just found my armor. I didn't sleep that night. I read Daniel's letter over and over, holding each word like a lifeline. He had trusted me to finish what he couldn't, and I wasn't going to let him down. The next morning, I returned to the restaurant, not as a grieving widow, not as someone begging for her place back. I came as the rightful owner, the one Daniel chose. Mark was in the kitchen, barking orders like he owned the place. When he saw me, he froze, then forced a smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "Oh, you're back. Didn't expect you this early." "I know," I said calmly. "You were hoping I'd stay away." The entire staff was watching now, waiters, cooks, even the dishwasher paused. The air felt heavy, like everyone knew something was about to explode. I walked into the dining room and turned to face them all. "I need everyone to hear this." Mark laughed nervously. "Is this really necessary? You're just—" "No," I interrupted. "You don't get to talk now." I pulled out the folder, Daniel's documents, and laid them on the front counter. This is a record of every dollar Mark stole from this business. Money he funneled into a fake supplier account. My husband discovered it before he passed away. A hush fell over the room. Eyes turned to Mark. His face went pale. "You lied to this team. You lied to Daniel. And you tried to push me out to cover your tracks." I can explain. "No, you can leave. Because starting today, I'm taking over. Daniel left this place to me, and I'm going to honor his legacy." There was silence. Then, a single clap. Then more. One by one, the staff stood behind me. Literally and figuratively. I wasn't alone anymore. And Mark, he walked out, speechless. That day, I didn't just reclaim a restaurant. I reclaimed my voice. After Mark walked out with his tail between his legs, the silence he left behind wasn't empty. It was empowering, but reality set in fast. The business was hanging by a thread. Bills were overdue. Supplies were inconsistent. Staff morale? Shaky at best. I stood in the center of that restaurant, looked around, and felt the weight of everything Daniel left me. But instead of fear, I felt purpose. First, I gathered the staff. I didn't pretend to have all the answers. I just told them the truth. I'm not Daniel. I don't know everything about running this place. But I know what it meant to him. And I know how hard all of you have worked. So, if you're willing to trust me, let's build something new. Together. There were tears, smiles, and slow nods that turned into full support. I wasn't just inheriting a restaurant. I was inheriting a team. We started from scratch. The menu? I simplified it. Brought back the dishes Daniel loved making the most. His signature rosemary lemon chicken, the butternut squash ravioli that got us our first food blog review, and of course, the creme brulee that always sold out. I called local farms, negotiated better deals, cleaned up the books, painted the walls, changed the lighting to something warmer, more inviting. And then, I changed the name. From the Silver Spoon, a name Mark had chosen for its fancy flair, to Daniel's Table, simple, honest, personal. The night we reopened, I placed a framed photo of Daniel on the front counter, next to a tiny placard that read, "Everyone deserves a place at this table." That was his motto. one he lived by even when others didn't see it. And that night, the restaurant was packed, not because of fancy ads or marketing tricks, but because people remembered what Daniel stood for. And now, so did we. The buzz around Daniel's table had grown louder than I expected. Food bloggers, influencers, and even local news stations were talking about it. Not just the flavors, but the story behind the revival. And when something becomes successful, guess what happens? People who once turned their backs start showing up. One quiet Thursday afternoon, I was going over invoices when the front door chimed. I looked up, and there they were. Daniel's parents, Mark, and to my surprise, Daniel's ex, Emily. It felt like a scene from a movie, one of those where the villain walks into the hero's castle pretending to check in, but I wasn't acting anymore. I wasn't scared. I stood up, chin high, heart calm. Daniel's mother spoke first. "We just wanted to see the place," she said, eyes scanning the walls like she owned them. Daniel talked about it so much. It was part of the family. I could almost laugh. "You mean the family that kicked me out after his funeral? The one that let Mark try to sell this place behind my back?" I kept my voice even, controlled. Mark tried to smile. "It's doing really well. We're glad. Maybe we could help manage things. You know, as a team." "A team?" The audacity. Emily chimed in next. "I'm a culinary consultant now. I could help elevate the menu. Bring in a younger crowd." That was when I realized this wasn't about Daniel. It wasn't about grief or memories. It was about money. They saw what I built, what I rebuilt, and they wanted a piece of it. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I walked behind the counter, gently picked up the framed photo of Daniel, held it close and said, "This place isn't for sale. Not for profit. Not for pride. And definitely not for people who only come around when it benefits them." Then I turned to the staff and asked them to escort our guests out. They left with the same entitlement they walked in with. But this time, it didn't intimidate me, because I had something they'd never understand: legacy, love, and purpose. A few weeks after the confrontation with Daniel's family, I hosted a private dinner at the restaurant, not for influencers, not for business, but for love. For Daniel. I invited his closest friends, our regular customers, the staff who stood by me when everything crumbled, and even a few people from the shelter where Daniel used to volunteer. The lights were warm and soft. A string quartet played in the background. Candles flickered on every table, and the smell of Daniel's favorite rosemary chicken wafted through the air. When everyone was seated, I stood in the center of the room and spoke. From the heart. This restaurant was once just brick and mortar. Then it became our dream. And after losing Daniel, it became my lifeline. Tonight isn't just about food. It's about family. The kind you choose. The kind that shows up when life gets hard. Daniel always believed in building something that brought people together. This is that something. The room fell silent. Some smiled. Others wiped tears. We shared stories about Daniel, how he once gave free meals to a struggling student, how he stayed up late to fix a broken sink just so the morning shift could run on time. Then I revealed the final surprise. I'd set up a scholarship fund in Daniel's name for culinary students from disadvantaged backgrounds. One of our servers, a shy, brilliant 19-year-old, was the first recipient. When I announced it, he stood up, speechless, then hugged me like I was his own mother. That was the moment I knew. I hadn't just saved a restaurant. I'd built something Daniel would have been proud of. And as I locked up that night, the wind gently rustling through the trees outside, I looked up at the stars and whispered, "They tried to push me out. But you gave me the strength to stand taller than ever." Speech balloon. To those who've been told you're not enough, let my story remind you, you are. And your comeback might just be someone else's inspiration.